It's called Seaton. My dad was in the same naval commandos as Hugh during the...
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, hang on a minute. He's rather deaf and he may not be able to hear.
I've been speaking to a few of the old fellows, so I'm used to that.
Hang on.
Thanks. Hello, yes, it is. I can't hear you too well.
You're rather faint.
You are the faint too. Hang on a sec, I'll turn my phone up. Hang on a minute. Hello?
Yes.
Is it? Okay, it's about the same for me. You and David Lee tells me, and Ken Barry tell me, that you were in NAN Commando.
That's right.
Because my dad was as well. My dad was Ray Seaton. He was a petty officer in N3.
Yes.
Hugh, which were you N1, N2?
I was in N3, but in the later part, and I only joined in just in time for Anzio.
That's right. But do you remember my dad at all?
Yes, I do.
well. It's strange. I've got Hugh. I've got a lot of photographs and movies into little bits of newsreels about the Anzio landings on a big photograph of all of N Commando that was taken in Porto San Giorgio.
Oh, yes.
And you would be in the photograph, I would imagine.
I think so.
Yeah, good. I wondered, I've got another little photograph with Tom Turton. Do you remember Tom Turton, presumably? Yeah. He was the CO, I think.
He was.
There's
Actually, the CO, he was in Commander M3.
Yeah.
And for a long time he hadn't got, I think, the beachmaster, because the Colonel Russell left the Redshaw Chapter Anzio.
Sure.
And Tom Turton took over.
Yeah.
The next 6 months.
Yeah.
But, eventually another CO arrived.
And who was that? What was his name?
Alexander.
Alexander. Because I've got a big list here from Ken Barry. I always wondered, because there was supposed to be 3 beachmasters and 1 principal beachmaster, and there didn't seem to be. So I wonder, okay, so that explains that...
we should have had a principal beachmaster in Anzio, and we didn't have, really.
No.
Russell was simply the senior of the 3 beachmasters.
So he took over the job, and then after he lost his leg, poor chap, Tom Turton took over.
That's right.
And then Tom Turton ended up, so I understand, running a pub in Tunbridge Wells.
Very likely. He ran a pub before the war.
In Whetstone.
Whetstone, that's right.
Called the Black Bull.
Yes. And one day I called in there, actually.
Yes.
I happened to be in that area, and asked after him, and the bloke behind the bar had more or less never heard of him.
Yeah. Well, because he ran a pub called the Duke of York in Tunbridge Wells after the war, but I'm not sure for how long. He died fairly young, I think.
He's certainly been dead for some years, but when I joined the Commander Association, I inquired after him, and they said I know he's gone.
Yeah. Do you remember there was a fellow called Redshaw, Morris Redshaw?
I only knew him slightly because he was one of the ones who was sent home just about before Anzio.
That's right, yeah.
About the time I joined him.
Well, I know there was a bit of a swap between D Commando and N Commando, because there was about 4 or 5 missing from N Commando. You were in Cabrit,
That's right.
And you were a bit short-handed, and so they borrowed a few guys from D Commando, and that's how you ended up in N.
Anzio suddenly came on the map.
Yes. Yes.
And so they hurriedly moved in up to Spain.
Yes. Because I've spoken to one of the guys who went the other way. There's a fellow called Archie Thomas, who Welsh fellow, who he was in N.
Yes.
And then when you went from D to N, he went from N to D, and he ended up doing the landings in the south of France or somewhere. And there's another fellow called Pocock, Jerry Pocock. He was a petty officer. He went out at the same time. But Hugh, I wondered, can I take your address, if that's okay? And what I would like to do, if I can, is send you some photographs relevant to your period of time.
Yes.
And if you could have a look at them, and maybe if you can help me identify a few people, if you can. You don't have a computer you can use, or a relation with a computer you can use?
My son's got one, so I don't think we can do something.
Because what I've got is a lot of... I actually went to the War Museum, yeah?
Yes.
And I got the sort of copies of all the film that was made of the actual landings in Anzio.
Yes.
So my dad appears with a tin hat on for a few moments when they were loading up the LCAs. It must be, I think it's near Salerno somewhere, when they were loading them up on the beaches with the North Staffordshire Regiment. We're getting,
we had North Stafford. When I went there, we did a practice in the Salerno landing.
Yeah.
We did the Salerno beaches.
Yeah. Because you actually did the Salerno landings, didn't you?
Yes.
Which was a bit nastier than anything my dad or Ann were involved with.
It was. The big idea was we landed the Commander Brigade just to the north of the main beaches.
Yeah, this is Salerno, yeah?
Yeah, Salerno.
Yeah.
And I was chief master into that.
Yes.
But it was very brief. We were only ashore for a day and a half.
Oh, yeah.
And then we brought everything ashore that we had to bring.
Yeah.
And so we were sent back to...
But that wasn't... I haven't gone into... Obviously, the one unit I've been tracking around is NAN.
Yes.
So the Salerno landings, I'm not sure, but I know that these, some of the D-Day landings, the Normandy landings, were a bit messy, and I thought that, the Salerno ones were, but maybe that was after...
the main beaches had a horrible time. Well, we had a horrible time because we were around.
Yeah.
All the time, but...
Yeah. Yeah.
But we went there very long.
Okay. You came out unscathed anyway.
Yeah.
Could I take your address? You're up in Scotland, aren't you, by your postcode, by your phone code? Okay, fire away.
Yeah, it's St. Birley, B-I-R-L-E-Y.
Yep. Excellent. Because I can send you a DVD with the movies on. Which actually you could play. Have you got a DVD player?
Yes, at least my brother-in-law.
Okay. I can send a DVD that has all these Anzio things. It's got, there's a few, my dad appears in it for a few seconds. I don't know if you remember a ship called the Glengyle.
Yes.
That appears as it's being sort of loaded up. From wherever it was loaded up from. I think, according to the documentation with the film, it was near Salerno somewhere.
A lot of them were loaded in Naples, but I didn't sure where Glengyle was loaded.
Sure. Well, okay. I'll send it to you. I mean, along with Hugh, does your son, does he have an email address?
No, I don't think he probably does.
Yeah. All right. don't worry. I can send you the sort of documentation that will kind of explain what you're looking at, because these old films, it's the original rushes or whatever you call them, from which the newsreels were made.
Yeah.
So there's no sound.
Right.
So they're not very self-explanatory. Okay.
remember the water newsreel which I had a bit of me on the Anzio because then we got a large pontoon truck.
I've seen in very stormy weather.
Well, there was one bad day.
Yeah. Go on.
Finished up at the top of the beach.
Are you one of the guys running around on top of it?
On top on, yeah.
Well, because I can remember that bit of film. That bit of film will be on the DVD I'll send you. I think what I've got is just about all the film there is from those Anzio landings. Yeah. Because there weren't that many cameramen running around, you know.
Yeah.
So I think whatever there is from Anzio, you'll see that. Plus, I can put in some, I can copy some photographs. Have you got that big N Commando photograph, Hugh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can send you a copy of that. And a few other bits and pieces.
One thing you haven't told me is your dad still with us.
No, he died, unfortunately, very young. He's been dead since 1975. He died. I don't know if you remember, he had 2 fingers missing on, which hand was it? On his right hand. And he came from Birmingham originally, but he'd been in the Navy since he was the age of about, well, he was, you know, the Arethusa. Yeah. There was a training ship for impoverished kids, and he was there from the age of 14, and then he was at the Ganges, and then he was in HMS Kent in the Far East, and then eventually got torpedoed in that off a place called Bardia in Libya, came back to England, then he was on a ship called the Pretoria Castle for a while, doing convoys in the Atlantic, and then they turned that into an aircraft carrier, so it was out of service, and somehow, and I don't know how, whether he was pushed or whether he volunteered, he ended up in the Naval Commandos, you know, up in Armadillo and... Sorry? Okay, yeah, that's where I'm going, yeah. But, I mean, N Commando was a lucky unit, because they did 3 landings, and they were all pretty well unopposed.
Yeah, that's right.
So, do you remember Sid Kipling?
Yes.
Because he married an Italian girl.
Okay. Father-in-law kept the level crossing at Portis in Georgia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've got a photograph of her wedding to Sid. I'll try to send you that as well. But I mean, Sid he's lost his memory. You know, he doesn't remember anything really now. But his wife remembers a lot. Yeah. There was a fellow called Pat O'Donnell, Irish bloke, who was in N3, able seaman. Pat, he's got virtually no memory. But you are the first fellow I have found who was in N3. I've spoken to Ray Bromley, who was N1. Archie Thomas, who was N2 for a while. Peter Lightfoot. Have you got the books? There's a couple of books. There's one by a fellow called Hampshire, called the Beachhead Commandos, which you don't figure in that one, Hugh, but then there's the recent one by David Lee, which I know.
Yeah, that's the only one that I know of.
Oh, no, you should look out for a book. I'll put some notes about it in the letter I'll send you, but there's an older one with more interviews by a fellow called Hampshire. It was written in about 1975, I think. You should get hold of it. It's out of print, but it's easy to get hold of. You'd probably find it interesting. Okay. All right, Hugh, I don't want to hold you up forever. Are you okay talking for a bit? Or? Okay. I wanted to, did you ever come across Popski's Private Army? You did? I thought you did.
Only in passing.
Yeah, sure.
The very last thing I did before I got the lead in campaign.
Yeah.
Turton had been over to see Popski. They were planning the sort of landing across the Lake Commachio.
Yes.
Top of the Adriatic.
I know.
And then the follow-up meeting from Turton took me along, and the very previous day, Popski had his own blown off.
Oh, God. So he wasn't there?
He sort of made the Canary, as he was known. He was a Frenchman. His name was really Canary.
I've been reading his book. Yeah, the name rings a bell, yeah.
I didn't know he got a book.
Is this well, you didn't know Popski had a book?
Oh, Popski, yes. I've got a copy.
Yeah, it's a very good book, actually. It's very, I don't know how true it is, but it's very, you know. Okay. This is in sort of Ravenna, Commachio kind of area?
Yes.
Okay. Because the story I heard was that apparently my dad told my mother that he had seen Mussolini hanging up upside down in that petrol station in Milan, which is in about April 1945.
I don't know how he did it, but it's quite possible. They got very fluid.
Yeah.
But this was really just after I was sent home.
Well, when did you come home, Hugh? Do you remember the month?
It was March, I think.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
It suddenly turned out that apparently I'd been overseas longer than any other Christian beach now. So
yeah.
This guy suddenly turned up and said he was my relief.
And what was his name?
I can't
remember, okay.
Going for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. But, so you didn't actually meet Popski himself? You missed him? But Turton did?
Yes, he did. He used to see these weird figures.
Yeah.
Down in Greece.
Yeah. Well, Ray Bromley told me that you guys, or the NAN commando, stole a box of revolvers or something from Popski. As in, because Popski's lot was so well known for swiping stuff, that the NAN thought they'd get their revenge in first. You know, and he was quite chuffed about that. But Peter Lightfoot told me that they had all sorts of ways of getting supplies, because they weren't very well supplied with stuff, and they had some inventive ways of getting more supplies. by forging dockets for non-existent landing craft, you know, and getting rations and bottles of whiskey for non-existent officers and stuff. It's quite amusing talking to him. And they stopped.
Sort of get registered for rations of the Americans and the British at the same time with folks sometimes.
Ah, yeah, that's all right. Well, because they stole a racing car, you know, in Cabrit. This would have been probably, I suppose, just before you got there. There was a fellow called, was it Sibley? I think he was in N1. He seems to have been at the centre of a lot of these innovative things. He stole. They were drunk one night in the town near Cabrit, and I can't remember the name of it. It could be. Yeah, could be. They were a little bit, and they needed some transport to get home. So they just found this racing car. It's an old, I don't know what it was, a Sunbeam or something. And he just drove it back to the camp. You know, and nobody seemed to, you know, mind much. And there's a photograph in the book that you haven't got of three of these guys sitting proudly in the racing car with a lot of tents from Cabrit in the background. Which is, the other, Mark, you didn't hear anything about Mark Clark's car, did you? And pushing it in a canal.
No.
No. Apparently they both. You see, I've been talking to all the wrong people. Apparently they borrowed Mark Clark's staff car at some point, and the Red Caps came around looking for it, and it had to be hastily pushed into a canal to hide it. Anyway, there's all these other stories. Popular. Well, no, I get the impression that he seems to have been a sort of egomaniac who wanted to get, you know, he wanted to be the first man in. Yeah, I've got that book, yeah.
I've got that too, but his sort of entry into Rome, they had to do it twice.
Once for real and once for the cameras.
The first one on film, so
yeah.
Again.
Yeah. No, I mean, he doesn't seem to be very, very popular at all. But are you in touch with any any of the old commandos, Hugh, or have you given up on all that?
Not very much, really. I lived a quite a long time in the Orkneys, and that's really cut me.
That is a bit of a long way, yeah.
Crickmar.
Yeah, I know the name. Wait a minute, I've got a little note about him. It says here, Crickmar, Lieutenant, Waiting Navy, it says. Somebody told me he was very good at little money-making schemes on the side. Does that sound likely? He's probably your best friend, Hugh. I don't want to slander anybody. I'm just passing on rumours, really.
I didn't know him very well. He joined us after Anzio.
Yeah. Okay. But then you had quite I don't know how, you crossed over after Anzio, yeah?
Yes.
How long were you actually, you were on the beaches slightly north of Anzio until they gave up on those beaches, didn't they?
A few days.
Okay.
And then after that, we took it in turns, N1, N2, and N3. So
yeah.
We were about 10 days on, 20 days off in the port.
Yeah.
It went on for nearly 6 months.
You were there for that long? Because the town was sort of slowly being flattened, wasn't it, by artillery? Say again?
We had a house of forts in it, but it got fairly battered, yes.
Yeah, I got the impression that, because they were there for so long and always within range of the guns, the German guns, the railway guns, that the town was virtually demolished by the time the whole deal was over. Yeah?
But, in terms, we actually crossed over to the Adriatic coast.
And I wondered, how exactly did you get there? You in Anzio, yeah?
Yeah. So we were going to and fro.
Yeah.
We just went to the landing craft, go back to Naples.
Yeah.
And then when our last section was pulled out, we were all in Naples.
Yeah.
And we were sent across the Adriatic coast.
But how did you get there? Is what's been...
So
it's overland?
Overland.
Over the mountains?
Yeah. And we stopped for a break halfway, and somebody had a radio, and that was how we knew it was giving me 640 crosses. The Normandy landing gear button.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you.
But we went over, and it was all a bit of a waste of time. They kept on planning.
Is that why you were hanging around? Because you got. Where did you get to the East Coast? Where was the town? That you. Okay. Yeah.
And there was going to be a little land that was put out in the mouth of the Anzio River.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we got it.
Yes.
But Tuesday, it was all bedevilled by 42 landing sites.
Yeah.
They were all taken away to the south of France landing.
Yeah.
So really we wasted everybody's time.
Physically, you were following the front line up the East Coast.
Yeah.
So you were always pretty close. According to Peter Lightfoot, I said, were you very close to the front line? He said, well, yeah, we were too close.
We moved into the house in the enemy.
Yeah.
And got a factory of huge characters sitting in the garden.
What, pointing at you?
And of course, again, he was personally firing back.
Yes.
So our house was a bit too close for a while.
Yeah.
But then the front moved on a bit.
And Porto San Giorgio seems to have been a sort of, I don't know, it might be sort of over-significant to me because I've got these photographs taken, there, and there's Sid Kipling met his wife there, and a lot of people seem to remember them. How long were you there for? Do you remember?
A few weeks, I think.
Oh, not very long, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it was a typewriter which came to the German headquarters in Porto San Giorgio.
Well, you still got it?
And the only person who can use it because it's single roll and the different patterns of the standard one.
Yeah, but can you use a normal typewriter now?
Not really.
Okay. And then Porto St. Julian, I don't have a map in front of me, but you move up the Adriatic coast and you end up in Ravenna over the winter, which was a long winter when nothing really happened.
It was pretty snowy and pretty cold.
Yeah, and wet. I understand it rained a lot.
You know, a lot of the land round about was flooded.
Yeah. And it was pretty, I mean, from, I can't remember the exact month, but right the way through till about April 1945, till something happened. You know, it was April when things started happening again on that front line, really. And okay, things, now, it finished, didn't it? I mean, basically, by about April 45, the Italians capitulated. Oh, no, they'd capitulated a long time before, hadn't they? The Germans capitulated, was it May? I think early May 45, in Italy.
Well, they officially backed up. The day we went to Salerno, which was September 43.
No, that's the Italians, Hugh. But the Germans, isn't it May 1945 or something, they packed up in Italy? And then they all started going home. Yeah. But you came home basically before the rest of NAN. So, okay, so, because obviously I'm trying to work out, by finding out what NAN Commando did, I'm trying to work out what my dad would have been doing.
Yes, I don't really know. I used to find out that I never had.
No.
You know, everybody was wondering whether we'd be sent to the Far East.
Yeah.
But that never happened to Germany, right?
Yeah. Because I used to hear the word, when I was a kid, you know, I had vaguely the impression, Dad was he was in the Navy, and he ended up as some kind of commando. But I never knew exactly. But, I mean, to be honest, the beach parties there was a little bit of commandoing to begin with, but it was kind of traffic control on beaches was the real job. Yeah?
For a long time, the one I joined, we were called Naval Party 867, I think.
Okay.
Somebody said, oh no, you know, all the ones in Scotland are called big commandos.
Is this because they've been to Canary? They've been through the commando business there?
I never went to near any of those.
Didn't you? Oh, you missed out on some fun.
Much less fun, I think.
Yeah.
I used to be swept to, and I was in Alexandria with a draft which was said to be chosen to destroy.
Yeah.
And no destroyer has now said it. I was meant to combine up to one job which would take about 6 weeks, the man said.
Yeah.
Actually, it's all like 2 years.
So, did you before, I don't really know the history of the commando, so did you, before Salerno, were there any landings for you before that, with the...
Yes, the first one I did, the one that was supposed to take 6 weeks, was the Italian island of Pantelleria.
Oh, I've got a little newsreel about that, which is, you might call it, because it's got the, the sort of commentary they have on these old newsreels. And we'll go in and get that off a good kicking, that sort of thing. You probably find it quite funny, but I can tell you, it was a very little island, wasn't it? Which, I think it was bombed just for the purposes of newsreels, wasn't it? Or something, I don't know.
No, I think it was very toughened up the bomb.
Yeah.
Private person.
Yeah.
It had an airfield, and they wanted to get the airfield into our possession before Sicily landed.
Yeah.
It was a month before Sicily.
Yeah.
And it had no beaches, so the only way to land in the island was to go driving straight into the harbour, which is what we did.
Oh, was that a bit nasty?
Well, it wasn't actually, because it was so well casted with shells and bombs beforehand that they were all still in the Redshaw.
Oh, yeah, okay. But it doesn't always work, does it? The old aerial bombardment, like a casino, didn't work very well for a long time.
It often makes up in most of the places, so that you get through afterwards.
Yeah. So, hang on, my little daughter's here. I just have to have a quick word. Hey, Lucy, what's the matter?
Because my mum has a card.
You can go, but she mustn't open it until Mother's Day, though. You can go and tell Mummy she can look at it, but don't actually let her open it because it's not really Mother's Day yet. Okay. So that's my daughter is well, no, you see, once I found somebody who from N3, I'm reluctant to let them go. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of amnesia amongst you guys, but your memory is very good. I mean, I found out, a fair bit by talking to you. Some of the old guys, I can talk to them for an hour and really come off no wiser. Yeah. So they're entertaining, but, and poor old Ray Bromley is, do you remember Ray? Yeah. I mean, he's quite sick. He's having chemotherapy, I think, for the second time. Yeah. But he sort of forces himself to talk to me occasionally, but sometimes he's just really not up to it. And it's, I know I should have started this malarkey a long time ago, but what has made it possible is the internet. Yeah, and finding the Commando Association and Ken Barry, who he gives me one name and a phone number, and they tell me another, and so it goes on. Hugh, I've kind of run out. I had a little list of questions that I put together kind of quickly, and I've run out for the moment, but I haven't run out permanently. I will be back. But Hugh, what I'll do, I've got your address. I'll send you a sort of package of whatever I can put together, and I'll give you a few days to look it over. Yeah? And then if it's okay with you, I'll give you a ring back and, sort of talk about it. Okay. And there's a sort of memoir by Redshaw. Have you read that?
No.
Oh, it's before, because he left just before Anzio, and you arrived just before Anzio, so you missed each other completely.
Well, I missed him because the and NAN were both in the. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So you knew him?
Yeah, I knew exactly.
Okay.
Officially, because he was the trial of 10
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Hugh, I'll let you go. My little daughter's completely driving me nuts. I'll let you go. I'll send you the package, and I'll give you a ring back in, Excellent. Lovely talking to you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.